Real quick, I'll just say it. Heike has never sprayed anything before with the HVOP. So I want to just take this moment to, help her understand how to break the gun down and how to clean it. One thing, she is using bin, so it's going to take a little bit more denatured alcohol to clean, but we're going to break this down for you really quickly. We're going to make it really easy. So this is an air controller. So this right here, as long as it's all the way out, I go all the way out with it, and then you can turn it about 3 or 4. So as long as it's back here, you're not going to have to deal with this, because if you wanted to turn your air down, you would just turn your turbine down. So this is something you're really never going to have to mess with. This is your fluid control, and what this does is this allows the needle to come back a little bit or far. The way that you know that it's all the way out is that you can see one thread right there. So your gun typically comes with the 1.0 needle in it. So what I want you to do is take off this air cap, and I want you to look at the number that's on this nozzle. 1.0 is good for powder glazes and very, very thin materials. Actually, Louis Hasso uses the 1.0 more than anybody ever, and he gets great results on it. I prefer a little bit bigger nozzle. So I want you to look into your, get your gun tool out, and I want you to look in your box and get the 1.3 needle. The way that you can tell the needle is there's 4 numbers. Well, there's actually 6 numbers, but it's the last number. You'll want to see 1315. The first thing that we're going to do is loosen the fluid control. Okay, we're going to loosen that, and that has a spring in it. We want to set that down. The next thing, we want to pull the needle out. This is the 1.0. Take the 1.3 nozzle needle and put it in here. You have to kind of depress the trigger about halfway to get it in. You don't have to push it all the way in yet. What products you spray 1.3? Bin. I use sometimes any, like varnishes or thinner materials. Like bin is a great one. Some isolantes, like the 2K and the single component isolantes, they're really thin. So I use the 1.3 for that. Anything thinner than that, like water your powder glazes or stains, we want the 1.0. The good thing about when you buy from learntofinish.com is that you get 4 needles and nozzles, which those are usually about $100 each. So that's the only place you're going to be able to get all of that stuff as a package like that. But that 1.3 is also a 1.5. The needle can be used for 2 different nozzles. So we're going to put the 1.3/1.5 in the gun. Okay? Then go ahead and put your fluid control back in there and get that going. So now you should have the 1.3 or 1.5 needle in there, but you still have the 1.0 nozzle. So take your gun tool and loosen the 1.0 and keep it straight up and down like this. Set the 1.0 down. See how I got the trigger depressed? and put the 1.3 in there. Tighten it with hands, and then just give it a little snug there. All right, so watch this. Here's what we're gonna do now. I'm gonna make my stuff on my front fall out. All right, so while all the stuff is out, I want you to notice that there is a gasket here. This gasket, Heike, has a thin side and then has a thick side. So the fat side goes out on that gasket right there. I'm going to take apart these two things here so we can do it piece by piece. So when you got the fat side out on there, then you're going to take this fan control adjustment, okay, and you're going to make it go sideways so that when it fits over, you can see that little hole right there. It should be at 5 o'clock. Sometimes when I'm using the back facing camera, everything is opposite. So the main thing is when I'm looking at this, I want to see that little pinhole at 5 o'clock. I want you to take this out, okay? Take this out and look at it. This also has a skinny side and a fat side. Just like everything on this gun, the fat side always goes out, okay? That if it's not right, you'll feel it. So the fat side out and this washer, and then what you want to do, a towel, and set everything in a row as you take it apart so that you remember to put it back together. Okay, so the fat side's out on that. Let's make sure this fat side is out on this, and then you don't want to push it all the way in. You want to leave it out just a little bit, okay? Because you can push it and it be all the way in like that. So every time you change a needle or a nozzle or clean it out, when you go to put it back together, I want you to have that out just a little bit, okay? And then of course this thing's pretty simple. You don't really ever have to clean this unless it gets paint on it. But this just pops right off and snaps right in. That's pretty simple there. Okay, so now that you've got this gasket out, we're going to set that to the side and we're going to start building again. So put the fan control adjustment to where you can see the pin at 5 o'clock. And then you're going to take this little guy, and this little guy is, you want that little hole at 5 o'clock so where you can see it. Okay, so now that you can see that hole, this is where it gets kind of tricky, but I'm going to show you it's going to be really easy when you get used to it. You're going to want to place this in there. And if you just set it down and you try to find it, it won't work. It won't find that hole. So you want to make sure that you put that pin in first. Make sure that the pin drops before the whole thing drops. You'll feel it click in there. Give me a little thumbs up when you get that. You just want, sometimes it's hard. Sometimes it's like, where is that thing? Pick the whole thing up and then just drop it down in that hole. The pin goes first. And now while you're holding the gun, depress that trigger and put your nozzle in. Normally this, after you're done cleaning, you're going to want to put a little drop of oil on these threads. Just a little drop. So you put your 1.3 in there. Tighten it by hand, and then just give it a little snug till it stops turning. It does not have to be tight at all. So once that nozzle is in there, at this particular point, I always try to turn the fluid adjustment. If this thing spins freely, you've got something backwards in here. And it's a lot easier to find out now that it's not correct than it is if you get paint in there and it's not correct. Now ask me how many times I've done that. Ask me. It's probably hundreds. I've forgotten this, or this was backwards, or this was backwards. So it happens all the time. And the first rule of learning how to use an Apollo is you got to mess up. That's the first rule. Second rule is don't get discouraged. So now you should have the 1.3 needle, 1.3, 1.5 slash, and you should have the 1.3 nozzle. If it's not in place, you have no fan control. Right, it's you're like, why won't this gun work? And it's all zero, or it'll spin freely. So if it feels nice and snug and tight, then you know you've got it right. Now, one of the things is if you don't reseat this gasket every time, then what happens is when you go to put it in there, it won't be snug. You'll feel it loose. So that's why every time I pop that little thing out and I reseat that gasket. So let me see you make a comment that you've got a nice tight fan control. Yeah, no, I'm telling you, I don't know how many times I have went to use this gun and it didn't have any fan control. That's because those two gaskets. Okay, got it. Okay, now you never want to leave your air cap off, because if this falls and gets knocked down, you got to spend $100 getting another one. So right now, you want to take your C high solids cap and just put it on there. That way, if it drops, these little horns will protect your very expensive, very important needle nozzle there. Okay, so you've got that on there. Call Lisa. Gravity. Okay, perfect. So did you take it out of the box? It should be, everything should be already together. But you want to make sure the black side of this check valve, this is a valve that keeps paint from running back into your gun. So it should be like this. The way you test it is you should be able to blow into it and you can feel it. If it was the wrong way, it would stop. Okay. Now on your gun, I don't know how they come from the factory, but you've either got this nipple or you have this screw. This screw is for using a pressure pot. So this makes it a remote gun. When you don't have this, when you don't have the nipple in there, you put this plug, and the plug, you know, but we're going to be using a gravity fed, so you want to make sure that you put this threaded nozzle. You don't want to over tight this either, just kind of give it a little snug. That's also something that you want to check every time you go to put your gravity fed on, because if this thing gets loose, you'll be leaking air and you won't be able, it won't work very good. So this thing is nice and tight. You've got the 1.3, 1.5, you've got the 1.3 nozzle, and you've got the C high solids cap. And while I'm on that, the differences on these caps are these little holes. So the B has small, the C has bigger. The high solids caps don't have those little holes. The B cap is made for doing long, skinny patterns that are really nice to not have overlapping. So like for shooting metallics or toners or, you know, little stains and stuff that you want to be very a finesse coat, this is what you want to use. But what we pretty much use all the time is going to be the C high solids cap. That makes a little bit more of a beefier, rounder fan, and it really helps force that material into all the edges of the cabinets. Most everything that you do on painting cabinets are edges. So a cabinet, yeah, it has the middle, but it also has a whole bunch of edges. So I want to keep my fan pattern a little bit smaller, called an air cap. These are nozzles. These are air caps. And don't listen to what I say sometimes, because my mind goes crazy and I say things that aren't right. So yeah, the air cap is the C high solids air cap. You're going to take your gravity fed gun or cup and just get it started on there. Just get it snug, and then take your tool and give it a nice little, you want it to be tight enough so that when you take your cap off, you don't loosen this. So you want to get a little bit more of a crank on this than normal. Make sure everything's nice and tight, and just give it, 75% of all. Brother Chad, how are you? Now, what I'd like you to do is take your oil right now, and I want you to oil up the threads on this gravity fed cup. So just give yourself a little bead of oil and kind of put it in those threads. So let's just do a practice on putting I'll tell you right now, you want to put it on there and actually go to the left until it clicks, then go to the right. So let's try that again. You put it on there, push in and go to the left until it clicks, then go to the right. And this is something that you're really going to want to get a rag and try to get it tight, because this cup is pressurized. So if this isn't on there perfect, or if you've got paint in this little rim, it's going to be leaking. So it's very kind of finicky, but it's really nice. So to the left and then to the right. Boom. Make sure that this is tight as well. Not super tight, but tight. And this goes on there. Okay? So here you've got the air coming up into here, pressurizing it up to the pot. And what's going to happen is that's going to push your paint to the nozzle, and it's really going to help you get that production. What's up, Brother Matt? To the left click, then to the right. So like you actually loosen it and then tighten it. So you loosen it until it clicks, and then you tighten it. So it keeps you from cross-threading it that way. So yeah, just put it on to the left until it clicks, and then to the right. Standard settings. Screw the fluid adjustment all the way in until it stops. This is a good idea to do every time you change nozzles and needles, so that if you've got any kind of debris in there, it seats it nice. So you're just seating the needle into the nozzle. So you tighten that all the way, and then you give it 3 half turns out. That's a great spot to start with your fluid adjustment. Now this right here is what our fan adjustment is. So if you'll see on there, there is a minus sign and a plus sign. You want to close it all the way to the minus. So you're going to go up with it. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go 1, 2, 3. That's it. So you've got 3 lines open on your fan control, and you've got 3 half turns on this. And I'll tell you, 9 times out of 10, that's where I'm spraying from. If you get to spraying and it's just taking a long time, all you're going to want to do is bump this a quarter of a turn. Quarter of a turn. So always start with it smaller, and then you can give yourself a little bit more. Like if you were doing a big door or something like that, you could open it a quarter of a turn. So like I said the other day, this is the best advice I can give you, is after you've opened that 3 lines open, you're pretty much going to leave that fan adjustment there, and you're going to be giving it a little bit here to make anything bigger. Right now is a good time for you to fill it up with water. And you're just going to practice spraying with water. Okay? Go into your garage. You don't have a pressure pot, so these came loose. These came loose in there. This gets screwed onto the top. And if you've got this one, you can see how these are. These are little gun holders, so you can set the gun down. You're going to plug in your air hose. Oh, here's another thing I like to do. I also, I don't think you have any Heike, but I like to put a little Loctite power grab on, or not power grab, but Loctite on that, because this will loosen up. This will loosen up. So what I'm going to do for you is I'm going to make a checklist of things to tighten before you use them each time. So this right here, I don't know how many times this has been loose and blows. So you always want to make sure this gets tight and that gets tight on here. Always check it every time. So your hose, when you get one from the factory, the best thing to do is stretch it out and leave it in the sun so that it kind of uncoils a little bit, because it does have a little memory from being on a roll its whole life. So this right here gets put right in there, and now you have your air hose connected to your turbine. One thing I do love about Apollo is John invented this blow-off tool. This blow-off tool turns your turbine into a compressed air machine. Anytime I use the compressor, I'm dealing with water and oil coming out, which is okay, but when you're really in a finish, the last, stages of your finish schedule, the last thing we want to do is blow compressed air all over your stuff, because then you can have droplets of oil, even invisible oil that you don't see, that will cause your coating to fisheye, and it's the most annoying thing ever. You can spend a bunch of money on dryers and transformers to clean your air, but I just use a lot of that stuff just for cleaning initial stuff. But when I start getting to the point where I've cleaned everything and I'm going, I like to put this blower tool on there and blow everything off with that. It's a good place to store that too, right on top. So the next thing you're going to do is go ahead and plug in your turbine. And if you'll notice, this is a real beefy cord. You want to make sure that you put it at a place that has good power. You really don't want to run this thing off a little dinky extension cord. So if you could get yourself a nice, 12 gauge, 14 gauge maybe at the least, you know, nothing longer than 50 feet. The smaller the better, and the closer you can get this to a plug. A lot of times I will put it next to the refrigerator because that's on its own circuit, or its microwave is its own circuit. So if you're at the end of the line and there's a whole bunch of fans and vacuums and stuff blowing, this thing pulls enough power that it will pop your breaker. So finding out where your power choice is coming from is a very responsible thing to do before you get spraying. So you want to put that in there like that. So when you have the LE, it has a 4-second delay before it kicks on. So when you turn it on, you're going to watch for this light to come on. 1, 2, 3, 4. Maybe it's a 5-second, I don't know. But it, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, so it's an 8-second delay. Also, this has an alarm on it that I designed that at 45 seconds, it's going to send you a warning beep. Now what that means is if you're using your blow-off tool and the turbine doesn't sense any pressure change, it's going to go into cool down mode, which is great. That's why we can give such a long warranty on the Precision 5 LE, is because of that cool down feature. The cool down feature does sneak up on you sometimes, so John designed an alarm that at 45 seconds you're going to hear a warning beep. When you hear that beep, all you have to do is cover the nozzle and it will reset that timer. Okay, so I want your first initial settings to be at about 5 or 5.5. So if I'm on site, I like to do closer to 5. If I'm in my shop, I like to turn it up to about 6.5. But you'll very seldom ever need to turn your turbine all the way up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it on and show you. You want to start from low. And then slowly build it up. So I'm at 5.3 right now. So from close, 1, 2, 3. What you're going to want to do is practice closing it a little bit. Closing it a little bit. Well, I want you to practice, the less amount of paint you have coming out, the better.
I have a big fan.
Okay, then close this down a little bit. So go up with it. Yeah. Yeah, you got it sideways like this, right?
Yep.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, so how does it, let me see it, like spray it like this. Let me see it come down. Keep doing it. Your turbine is on 1.0. This is what it should look like. Hold on. Now just practice closing your fan adjustment a little bit. And
Right.
practice closing your fluid adjustment a little bit. So
Okay.
there's little bumps. I want you to get familiar with how to adjust that.
All right.
All right, so do me a favor, and I want you to spray out about 5 different quarts of water. And I just want you to kind of practice keeping it straight. You don't want to fan it like this. You know that.
Right. Right.
Keep it straight. And remember, this is not an airless, so it's not going to be near as fast as an airless. So you're going to want to come down just a little bit and keep passing over it, and passing over it, and passing over it. Before you put your bin in there, you're going to want to take denatured alcohol and put the denatured alcohol in there and get everything wet with denatured alcohol, and then spray some denatured alcohol through it.
Okay.
And then you can spray bin all day long. Every time that you go to fill it up, you want to make sure that all of this is clean and this is clean.
Right.
Keep it clean all the time. And I'm telling you right now, you're going to spend about an hour cleaning it up at first. Okay, now you've got plenty of air movement and you've got plenty of respirator cartridges with the pre-filters, right? You're going to want to make sure that you have these types of charcoal cartridges.
Charcoal, okay.
Yeah, if they're the pink ones, now I'm not an authority on that, but I don't think the pink ones are designed to filter bin. So you want to make sure if you don't have these, the NIOSH 6001, you need to make sure that you have that, because this primer right here, this HBR1, is a really good primer. Also, they make that Avocard, they make Universal Prime. DC Clark has a bunch of good primers. Also, if you wanted to get into some Renner, you can call Harvey Zook and get you some single component products that are really good. But it also boils down to making sure that you don't paint over nothing shiny. Okay, everything has to be dull, no shine, no grease, and you'll get a good bond and a good strong chain in your coating. So, are you my emotional support animal?